Okay, I'm giving kids their first introduction to domain and range. And I said that domain is from left to right, and it's about x's, and the range is about the y's, and it's from low to high. So in this particular function, my domain goes from 1 to 7, and my range goes from -14 to -2. Now, the thing I haven't told them yet is about when it's an empty spot on the end, like a not filled in point versus a filled in point. Let me remind you, do you guys remember when you would graph like 5, and if you have an empty spot like this, that means it's not 5, but it's everything bigger than 5? Whereas if you graphed it like this and you filled it in, that it meant it included 5. Do you remember that? Do you remember that in the empty one it doesn't touch 5? And on the filled in one, it does touch 5. Do you remember that? Yes. Okay, good. So it's like that. And the symbol that we use is not an empty or a filled in circle. The empty circle is like a parenthesis, and the filled in circle is a bracket. Okay, so you have to ask yourself, if it touches it, this one touches 5. If it touches it, you use a bracket. You use a parenthesis if it does not touch. So on the one we did, do you remember it had filled in dots? So it touches, so it's a bracket. See, these are filled in. They're not empty circles. So, brackets. Bracket, 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 bracket. Okay. New problem. And I want you to start, I want you to have it on your own iPad. So this worksheet is there. Would you please right now find that worksheet in Schoology that looks exactly like this. And I'll zoom out so you can see it says domain and range on the top. Open that up. I'm going to ask you to show it to me in about 30 seconds. Open it up on Schoology right now. Now it looks like everybody has that opened up. We're going to go to problem number 2 right here. Domain, I'd just like you to write X. Range, I'd like you to write Y. Domain, I'd start with the numbers, and then I would put in a bracket or a parenthesis as I go. So like this one goes from left to right. I might put that above it just to remind myself when you're new at this. Domain is from left to right, and domain's about the X. So if you find yourself grabbing any number that's not an X, you're not doing it right. Do you get this one goes from 3 to 24? Does that make sense to you? Furthest left it goes is 3. Because see? The furthest right it goes is 24. But last time they were parentheses. This time, no, last time it was brackets. This time is parentheses. Because it doesn't touch there. Because it has an empty circle. If those would be filled in, then you'd use brackets. All right, range is about the y's. So grab numbers off the y-axis. And always start with the low first. It's so common. I don't know why. Human nature, I guess. Everybody wants to start with the high. Start with the lowest it goes. Lila, what is the lowest this thing goes? 2. Does it touch at 2? No. So do we use parentheses or brackets? Parentheses. Good. Comma. What is the highest that it goes? Volunteer. Say it if you know it. 14 is correct. 14 is the highest it goes. And does it touch there? No, it's an empty spot. So parentheses. There we go. 2 to 14. Are you catching on? Do you feel like you're getting this? It's just the X numbers and then the Y numbers. It's left and right. and it's got to be down to up. All right, so here's another one. This is supposed to be easy level. If you have to, write an X and Y, and left and right. This is just about the X numbers now. Only use things in that circle. Mr. Cole, can you tell me what the furthest left is that this goes?
-20.
It doesn't go that far.
Oh,
Not quite.
-16.
There you go, -16. Zariah, how far to the right does it go?
For what?
Sorry? You can get this.
16.
16. Does it touch on either of them? Yeah, it touches on this one. So on the right side it touches. The other one's a parenthesis. There you go. Never mind, the range. What's the lowest this function goes? Notice
20.
I'm in these numbers now because I'm in the Y's. Okay, go ahead.
-20.
-20 is correct. That's the lowest it goes. Does it touch there?
Yeah.
So bracket or parenthesis?
Bracket.
Bracket. Highest it goes?
20.
20, and that's up here, and that's this, and so should it be a parenthesis or a bracket? You got it. How many of you had that before I said it? All right, you're starting to get these. This is good. -20 to 20. This is one question on your next test. You're going to have something like this where you got to tell me what's the domain and range of something. All right. Now, a lot of people get so obsessed with these endpoints that when I ask how low does it go, they don't even think about this spot. Do you agree that the function is lower than those two circles?
Yeah.
Okay, so don't mess up your range. Your range goes from lowest it goes to highest it goes. All right, the domain, you'll still focus on these two dots because that's from left to right. But for range, there is a lower spot down here. All right, so try to answer your domain and range for number 4, and I'll see if you're getting this. If like 3/4 of you get this right, then I'll say, oh, as a class, we're getting it. Domain's X. These numbers. Now, I did stay up late last night, and I got your tests done. You get them back today instead of making you wait the long weekend. But you really want to have time to do corrections and stuff. If you got a bad test, at least you'll know, and you'll be able to see your results. Overall, it was pretty good. All right. The domain on this one is from left to right. You've got to memorize that. And now I go, how far left does it go? Oh, that's here. And so that tells me it goes to -20. And it's empty circle, so I'm going to not touch there, so I'm going to have a parenthesis. Right. It goes all the way to here, which is 10, and it does not touch there, so parentheses. Right? Okay, good. Range. Now, people get confused by this. I understand. There's no number there. Yeah, but you're asking yourself, how low did it go? How low did it go? 0. 0. Don't grab an X number. Right now you're doing a range, and range is about Y numbers. So which Y number do I use? Well, out of all of them, the lowest it goes is like right there, and that's at 0. To the highest it goes? Say it if you know it. 24. And it touches 0. And it doesn't touch 24. I get how that's confusing to people. Like, all the other ones you put parentheses on. Why did you put a bracket on that? Because it touches. This touches 0. The lowest it went was 0, and it hit 0. It didn't just get close to 0. it touched it. That's where 0 lives, right there. And it touched 0. So it's a bracket. All right. One last one. And I feel like from here, if we get almost everybody, then we should probably move on to the last thing I got to teach you, which is way easier. Way easier. Domain and range is hard for people to get, but once you got it, it's not that bad. Keely, what's the furthest to the left that, remember you use X numbers, that our function goes? -1 is correct. It's right there. That's one of the X numbers, -1. Sydney, what's the furthest to the right it goes? Yep. Does it touch at either of them, Sydney? It's a parenthesis, parenthesis. There we go. Kilner, the lowest it goes? To the highest it goes? Did it touch at either of those? Yes. Very good. So bracket there. And if it doesn't touch, it's a parenthesis. There we go. Be honest. How many of you had that without me? All right. It's not quite enough. Let's do one more. I promise this is the last one either way. Domain. Khalid, tell me something you know about domain. You wrote stuff down, right? What's domain about? Is it about the X or the Y? The X. And what words was it? From what to what? Good. All right. Awesome. That's what you got to memorize. Dessa, how far to the left does this function go? Remember, we're only using X numbers. -2 is the furthest to the left that this goes. That's right here. That's actually the furthest to the right that it goes. I think you were looking at this number, and that's a Y number. We're doing only X numbers. See, it's got to be in the red circle. So the furthest to the left that this goes, let's get somebody else. Damien, what do you think the furthest to the left is? Yep. Because look, this is the furthest to the left spot right there. And it's at -8. What's the furthest to the right, Damien? That spot. It's right there, which is -2. Damien, does it touch at either one of them? So I need to use a bracket. Yep. Touches there. Wait a minute. Yeah. I'm looking at this too. I'm going to scribble out this too, because I felt like I should use those numbers more than once right now. Why am I not using those? Because those are Y numbers, and I'm doing the domain. So if I'm doing the domain, I should only be using the X numbers, which are the ones circled in red. Okay, so the range, you're right. It's a bracket at the -2. And at the -8, parenthesis. Okay, the range is how low to how high. Look for the lowest spot. There it is. Now figure out whether we're doing X's or Y's. Range is Y. And it's -4. -4 to highest it goes? 2. Bracket because it touches it 2. Parenthesis on that one. Now how many of you got that one? All right. I feel like we've got enough that you pretty much understand domain. It's your first day. Are you supposed to be an expert? It's your first day you've ever learned it. No. Some of you already are an expert, I can tell. But you don't have to be. The test isn't going to be for like a week and a half. We'll practice it. But you better practice it tonight because I'm giving you a homework assignment on it. Everybody open the other worksheet that was in today's folder. It looks like this. I always cut it down a little bit. there aren't that many questions, and you're going to have a fair amount of work time, so I'm only cutting off one problem. Find this worksheet. Got this worksheet up? Cross off number 2. Number 1 I'll do with you. This was on the basic 20. You remember me saying those basic 20 would be important? I know some of you have been working on it. And hopefully you learned this one where you can put in any numbers you want. Like you put in 0, 1, 2, 3. But you have to put in one negative number. It's a rule of mine to actually help you. You have to use one negative number. And I know that's kind of a pain. Like, couldn't I just use 4? Nope. Because you have to go on this side. See, the negative numbers are over here. If you never put an X as a negative, you'll never have any point on the left side of the graph. And sometimes the graph is like normal over here, but then all of a sudden, whoop, goes this way. And you have to notice that, and you have to therefore have graphed at least one negative. All right, so you have to have one negative. Now, a typical test question on this is going to say you have to have 5 points. So what we're doing is finding 5 points. Have you got those numbers filled in yet? 0, 1, 2, 3, and -1. Now, we just stick them in the equation and watch the magic happen. If I put in X is 0, do you see what it says? Y equals 0. That's what the Y is. It's that easy. It's the same number you put in. So if I put in X is 1, Y equals 1. Oh, look at that. It's just copying the number over. So if I put in a 3, I'll get a 3. If I put in a -1, I'm going to get a -1. And that tells me what this looks like, because that is 5 points on the graph. If you don't know where 0, 0 is, I feel like I should quit and run away. 1, 1, right there. 2, 2, over 2, up 2. 3, 3, right there. And you remember me saying I wanted one number with a negative? That's this last one. -1, -1, and that goes right there. And that makes sure that I have something to the left of 0, 0. And now I can say that's enough points. You don't have to make dots forever. There's my equation. It's just a straight line that's at a 45-degree angle. We just graphed this without any special graphing calculator or anything. That's what y equals x looks like. It's just a straight line. This one we skipped. Now we're going on to number 3. This time, don't just stick in 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, because square roots don't always work out nice. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. Now, in case you forgot, I'm going to take 2 seconds on square roots. Square root of 16 is 4. You remember how to do those? You figure out what times what makes 16. Okay, so square root of 9, what's that? 3. Square root of 4, what's that? 2. Square root of 3, what's that? It's not a nice one. So don't use that one. It's some weird decimal. Like 1.6 times 1.6 or something like that. So don't use weird ones. These are what's called perfect squares. So use numbers that work out nice. Now, a pro tip for you, some ones that work out nice that are small, square root of 1 works. What square root of 1 is? 1. How about square root of 0? 0. One more thing. I said to always use a negative number. What if I do square root of -1? It's impossible. It's called imaginary. You might think it was 1 or -1, but it's not. Because 1 times 1 won't give you -1. And -1 times -1, that also won't give you -1. This one's impossible. And so square root of 1 is actually I for imaginary. Now, we're not going into imaginary numbers today, but we do in honors. If this was the honors class, get really deep into imaginary numbers. But for you guys, we just go, can't do it. Not with real numbers. So you can just say, doesn't work. Okay, So here we are on problem 3, and I just said you could use any numbers you wanted, so I choose 4 because it's going to work nice. You know what I mean? Like I put in a 4, and a square root of 4 works nice. What is it? Square root of 4 is 2. Good. So 4 comma 2 is a point. And if you can graph 4 comma 2 over 4 up 2, you'll be good. You just have to make some points and graph them. This is doable. You can do this. All right, what's the square root of something else that works nice? Come on. 16. Problem with 16, though, is it goes off my graph. So you're not wrong, but let's not use it. Like 16 is too big for my graph. What's another one that's going to work that stays less than 10? 9. Good. Square root of 9 works, and it's 3. What else you got? Say them out loud if you think of one. Square root of 1. I know it's kind of weird, but what times what makes 1? 1. So square root of 1 is 1. And there's another one I gave you that works nice. 0. Because the square root of 0 is 0. And I did say to always use one negative number, so I would actually accept that. So I put in a negative number, and then I realize, wait a minute, square root of negative? Can't do that. Impossible or imaginary. Or if you just wrote like that, can't do it. Can't do square root of -1. I'm okay with only 4 on the square root one, because you'll try a negative and realize it doesn't work. Okay, so then you just have to graph the points. If you know how to graph, you get a free point on this test. Just go over 9 up 3, over 1 up 1, over 0 up 0, and there it is. Connect the dots. Okay, so there's going to be some problems that are that easy. Then the next level is, what's its domain and range? You still have to do that? Yes, but not on this problem. But if I just was talking about it, domain would be from left to right. Do you agree that it goes to as far left as 0 and as far right as it never stops? What do you put for it never stops? Infinity. So if I was doing domain here, it would be from 0 to on the left to on the right. Look, it's an arrow. It goes forever. Whenever there's an arrow, you just say infinity. I personally use INF. I sometimes use the sideways 8, for infinity symbol. So either of these are okay. It touches 0. And have you ever been taught this? Can you ever actually touch infinity and get there? No. So you can't touch it. So it's a parenthesis. 0 to infinity would be the domain on this thing. So if it has an arrow, you're going to have an infinity, because it goes forever to the right. The last point I made was 9, 3, but that doesn't mean it stops forever there. It keeps going, because I could put in like 16. Square root of 16 would be 4. All right. So now, here's some more of those that we practiced already with domain and range. Notice they all have solid dots, except if you really zoom in, that's an empty dot. Note that, because that one, it doesn't touch it, so you'll need a parenthesis for that spot. Okay, so if I wanted to help you a little bit on domain and range, I'd write X and Y for domain and range. And domain is left to right, and range is low to high. Just a reminder of how that works. All right, you gotta admit, I didn't leave you with very much homework for Halloween weekend. Pretty easy. But you do your part now. And that's all I got for you for today.